So, good afternoon. Can everyone here in the back, we're good? Wonderful. I say afternoon because this is the hardest presentation to give, not because of the topic, but because of the time frame of which day it happens, and that is right after lunch. So I will try to use some semi-inflection versus putting everyone to sleep with a nice, boring, smooth, collective, calm voice, even though I might be talking about death, mayhem, and sudden ejections of everyone out of this room. But, if you say it nice and pretty and calm enough, it might just give you that lackadaisical feeling to where it really doesn't matter what I say, you're going to just say, okay. So it's not a problem. All right, so we're going to talk about controlling your landings, obviously, through your canopy. All right, again, this is mostly for tandems, but hopefully anyone and everyone can take some of these techniques and present it to students, fellow jumpers, and ultimately the larger picture of everyone being safe with landing and being able to walk off the drop zone with the same kind of happy feeling that they had during the skydive. All right, things to consider. We want to have a plan, we want to communicate, we want to think, and we want to react. Planning, all right? Am I a participant with this skydive? Okay? The jump, run a course, wins a loft, where's a spot, who else is in the plane, all right? Are they a student? Are they a wingsuiter? Am I going to be a leader or a follower, and do I know the difference? All right? So one of the things that I've learned while being here is knowing how you guys kind of do like the student progression and how you guys work within the planes. You guys have like a designated, assigned jump master, correct? But when you start jumping more and more and more, especially from a tandem perspective or an instructor perspective, though you might not be that assigned jump master, should you know what's going on in the plane? Absolutely. See, all the heads that went up and down strictly because I was moving my head up and down. So it made me appear to myself that I had max participation within this classroom, so it's all right. But yes, you guys as, the instructor or an experienced jumper should know who's in the plane. More than that, are you a leader or are you a follower? And do you know the difference? Even some leaders can be followers. Take, for example, there's an emergency that happens. You have, jumpers in the plane. A lot of times they want to look to the most experienced. They might look to someone, but maybe there's multiple experience in that plane. Maybe he decides to start directing things based off of what the pilot said he needed and how long he can control the plane. So he starts directing. But some people look at me, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to take away his thunder? No, because sometimes as a leader or someone of experience, you know when to follow. So I'm going to say, hey, he said this, let's do that. Let's do as he said, and we're going to continue on. All right, so be an active participant within the skydive. Do you know where the DZ is from any direction? All right, do you know where your outs are? That is a very, very important thing because a lot of people think that just landing a canopy has to do with, hey, drop zone's right there, I'm going to come in, what kind of winds are there, and I'm just going to land. Ultimately, you guys have to think on a larger picture, and a lot of that thinking should come before you even get in the plane. Do I know what the jump run is? Do I know kind of like what the winds aloft are doing? Is it the first jump of the day? Are there multiple jumps? Have I asked somebody, it's like, hey, what are the winds doing? All right, because until you actually do it, a lot of times it's just a suggestion or, a forecast, okay? But have you honestly thought about, do you know where the drop zone is from any direction? And a lot of times you have to also think if you're working with a student, all right, AFF, ID, static line, or whatever, it's like, hey, I know exactly where I am. Bunch of clouds in the sky, right? I know where I am, but does your student know where they are based on what they see? Okay, so these are things, broad picture, that you got to look at. Who else is in the plane, obviously? Is it a student? Is it a hop and pop? Is it a tracking? All right, someone attempting to free fly? Do they have a plan? And again, I like how you guys have a jump master that figures these things out. All right, but like as an instructor for myself, someone in front of me and back of me, I like to know what their plan is. All right, if they're a student just climbing up the altitude, am I ready to get out of that plane if when they do their hop and pop or leave at that lower altitude, because for you guys students, they depart at 5,000 feet, correct? So what happens if they were to hit the tail of the plane? What happens if they weren't to do something, quite appropriate? Yes, there's a jump master. Yes, they're taught, hopefully what to do, but what happens if they do not execute it properly? Are you guys ready to leave that plane if need be? Are you ready to land your canopy regardless anywhere based on an emergency procedure? All right? Mike Tyson, famous boxer, right? He once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. All right? So what would your particular punch in the face be? Would it be, I have to exit the plane, I don't know where I'm at, I know where the drop zone is, I can't get there. So where are my outs around that drop zone? A wingsuit, what's their flight path? What's their opening altitude? All right? Now granted, some of these things for your drop zone might be known, right? It's like, hey, if you're wingsuiting, you know this. But here's my question to you. I'm not a wingsuiter. Do I know this? Should I know this? Yes, I have something safe, drop zone, or your jump master says everything's good, talks to the wingsuiter, all that kind of stuff, right? But there's nothing more fun, for some people's point of view, and scary from others' point of view, than having someone open right next to you, because I'm a student, I'm open up high, and I have a wingsuiter that just suddenly pops open right there, and now that freaks me out. All right? So think about that. Just because there's a plan that's known, does everyone in the plane know that plan? All right? So again, I know you guys have the jump masters, and they kind of dictate different things, but that might be a question that you ask yourselves. And again, in this room, we have lots of experience. We have those tandems. We have experience from younger jumpers, all right? And when that comes into play is if I have a younger jumper in here, to me, that younger jumper has experience because they have enough experience or thrive or want to learn more and be educated. So I don't take that lightly. So everyone in this room, in your jumps or on the plane that you're on, do you know what's truly happening on the plane? Communication, all right? Because sharing's caring, right? Absolutely. So, expect others not to see you, communicate and share the pattern, a knock it off altitude, and turn left, turn right, and hold in brakes. That one's going to be a fun one. All right, be proactive, not reactive. Okay? Everyone in here, one of the best things about, or the most important things about canopy flight, all right? Because again, landing is not just the last 10 to 20 feet, all right? Landing, it's a step of multiple things. How did I get there in the first place? What decisions did I make prior to that landing to put me in that position to have to land there? All right, these are all things you have to think about. But you want to be proactive and not reactive. Is there a student there? Am I going to expect that student to see? Whether they're a student, whether they're a tandem instructor. Think about it like this. There are a lot of tandem instructors out there that feel, I'm a tandem instructor, I have the right of way. When that's not necessarily what should be, the thought process. But ultimately, did they see you? All right? Am I the lower jumper? Do I have the right of way? What are the rules? There was a possible hand raised in the back. Did you have something to say, sir? No? Okay, not a problem. I just want to make sure. But these are things that you guys, again, have to think about. And always err on the side of they don't see me. Always err on the side of, I'm in the wrong place. I need to get to the right place. The winds could pick up. Something can change. All right? Always think about things from a different perspective. All right, the communication, sharing the pattern. Holding an iron cross, kicking someone down, clicking your heels. Whatever it might be, all right, are you communicating with the other jumpers? On tandems, all right, hey, I have someone on the front of me that is not feeling all that well. I have to slow things down. I'm going to slow my roll, all right? But I don't want to cause, congestion behind me. I want to let those guys go past me, things like that, all right? So communicate within the air. If we have two students or someone that's like, two canopies, regardless of their experience, that they are at the same altitude, well, we got to land kind of at the same time, and that's normally not necessarily what we want to do. But if we do, there's different things that we want to be able to do, which we'll cover here in a minute, to be able to land at the same time and share that landing area. All right? A knock it off altitude. A lot of times this happens for, or mainly needs to happen for tandems, but it can also happen for the younger jumpers. If you just want to spiral down all the way down in the middle of the traffic area and things like that and get your swoop on or whatever, a lot of drop zones literally have that as your own pass, meaning a hop and pop. Or if you're going to, you know, do something more than like a 90-degree turn, 180-degree turn, whatever, a high-performance turn, then you need to do that at a completely separate area. Or, again, you have your own pass because you get out low because I want to try something new or whatever. But tandems per se, you get out, there's a knock-it-off altitude. You know, you have multiple people jumping at the same time. So you always have that one tandem instructor that wants to get down first, or they want to give their student, you know, the fun ride or whatever, but there should be a known altitude to where it's like, hey, now I'm entering the pattern, and now it's, you know, about landing safe. I gave you a great time, everything was good, but now we're going to land safely. All right? Okay, because it's not always about you. Turn left, turn right, all that kind of stuff, right? There's a story behind this. So I was on the Golden Knights. I was doing a tandem. And there was a video person. He left the team for a while, came back to the team, and he learned a lot when he was gone. You know, he was thankful for having a job, thankful for being there, thankful for being able to jump, and he just wanted to support and have a good time. So he was doing video at the time. There was another video person. I'm just listening to this conversation because I was on tandems, but he had two video guys doing the jump. And one of the video guys said to him, it's like, dude, I'm sorry I cut you off. I didn't know, you know, kind of what you were doing. I'm sorry that I came in like that. He's like, dude, you had the right of way. You're the lower jumper. And he said something that was very interesting to me that I've taken and, you know, told other times. He's like, dude, I can turn left, I can turn right, and I can hold in the brakes. It's like, you know what? He's absolutely right. So when communicating or, you know, having those individuals, you ruined my swoop. It's like, well, you know what? I was the one with the right of way. I was a lower jumper or whatever. Ultimately, it's not about you, all right? You can always turn left, turn right to avoid being proactive, and you can always hold in the brakes, okay? It's not always that you have to try to get down or paint yourself in a bad position for that landing based on someone else coming by. How many tandem instructors or anyone that just opens up higher have to deal with a student in the traffic pattern? It's been a few of us, all right? Is it their fault? No. Especially if they're the lower jumper. But sometimes they can almost be on level with you or a little bit higher or whatever. It's not their fault because of your experience level versus their experience level. Yes, they should know certain things, but bottom line is be the one that's being proactive, be the one that's assuming that they don't see you, that they don't know, and make the safe call when it comes to the canopy flight coming down. All right, critical thinking. Always leave yourself an out. All right? Know when it's too much, know when to sit down, and then support thy fellow jumper. That's what you and I talked about before the class, and it's not a problem. All right, cheat to one side of the landing area that you know you can make. There are times in high winds where people say, don't fly over anything you don't want to land on. Who here has heard that? All right, a few people, of course. That has merit, but then it also confuses newer jumpers, especially when you're lower down to the ground. Because if that's the case, unless I'm jumping over like some prairie lands, everything that I'm over, I don't want to land on. I can't be over it. So what does that do to me? Now, when you get lower down to the ground, yes, you don't necessarily want to fly over, like, say, trees, right? But at the same turn, if you keep yourself on just that small bit of that landing area and you're keeping yourself over that, the lower you get to the ground, the sharper your turns have to be. The more aggressive your turns have to be to not cheat yourself to one side. So know what the wind cone is. Know where I can safely be within that wind cone to still get forward penetration or be able to land. All right? Can anyone here just define a penetration check? Anybody? You have the microphone? Please use the microphone.
Yeah, it's a check whilst on the canopy,
Okay.
free from hazards, free from other jumpers, whilst you've got spare time to be able to look down, use a part of your body as a sight system to see which way you're going in the airflow, if it's forward, backwards, left or right, so you understand how much drive you're getting.
Absolutely. When do you do a penetration check?
periodically through the jump, not just one necessary time. You know, you should be doing it multiple times, and multiple times gives you skill. Skill lets you do it just like that.
All right. So I want to say that you completely ruined my next thing, but in a great way. All right. So kudos to you yourself, because most people, when I ask them, what's a penetration check? They always like, well, at 1,000 feet, I want to turn into the wind, and I want to, see how far I'm going and everything else. He's the first person, and I'll literally say the first person, that has talked about a penetration check being throughout the skydive. You should constantly be doing that penetration check to know how fast you're going across the ground. Because then that way I know whether I'm going downwind, crosswind, am I getting pushed to the side, am I holding into wind and not making much ground across the ground, all right, or not much forward movement across the ground, okay? So using all of those things helps place you in the appropriate area the closer you get down to the ground, because yes, sometimes you do not want to be over anything you don't want to land on, but in the same turn, you don't want to paint yourself or push yourself into a corner where the only way you can get out of it is a sharp, steep turn low to the ground. Okay, and that's where a lot of problems also happen, because how did we get ourselves to that last 20 to 60 feet, and how did we, pound ourselves into the ground, whether we're a solo jumper or a tandem. All right, no one is too much. Everyone should have a personal limit. Those that don't are the ones that scare me. Okay, have your personal limits. Identify what your personal limits are, and then also know when to push those limits under specific or certain situations. If you don't know when that is, easy. Ask an instructor. Ask someone with Canopy experience. All right, ask someone with Canopy experience of multiple size canopies. These are all things that, shows that that individual wants to learn, wants to do the right thing, but more importantly, be safe to themselves and the people around them. All right, know when to sit down. Better to be on the ground than being in the air, right? Obviously. But here's the thing, when knowing when to sit down. The problem is a lot of times where we've all, for the most part, seen it, someone sits down because it's outside their comfort level, or they're not ready, something's not right about the jump. And then what do a lot of people say? Oh, well, I got this. Not a problem, right? They go on because they're either comfortable or whatever. But then we have those that are sitting down that make comments like, well, I wouldn't jump in those kind of conditions. I'm smarter than that, or this or that or whatever. In doing that, what exactly are we, referring to or implying to people that are within earshot? Anybody?
It's Mickey Mouse.
What's that?
But it's Mickey Mouse.
That's Mickey Mouse?
Yeah,
Expand.
Well, so if you're saying, God, I wouldn't be doing that and all that, what you're saying to the people around you is the people that are jumping are Mickey Mouse. They're taking risks that they don't need to.
Okay.
Jumping outside the limits.
Okay.
Or being scary.
Absolutely. Now,
Mickey Mouse.
You're Mickey Mouse. Gotcha. First time I heard of Mickey Mouse. But we'll go with it. So, if we're Mickey Mousing it on the ground, the people that are passengers, more importantly, like in the tandem side, or students, okay, family of passengers, they're like, well, maybe you're giving the interpretation, or you're giving a thought into them that it's not safe. When it could be safe, it's just outside of your personal preference. All right? So if you're going to sit on the ground and know your limitations, they're your limitations, leave them be that. Okay? If you have questions or anything, or if it's an unsafe manner, then obviously bring it up to someone's attention, but it's not something to just, talk about, especially when you have passengers, family members, people that don't really know, and they interpret what you're saying is that you give the drop zone a bad name, or that, oh, well, they just don't do things safe here, and it spirals into something that isn't necessarily needed. All right, support thy fellow jumper. If you have nothing good to say, don't say it in front of a passenger. Don't say it in front of a customer. That's the big thing, all right? We have lots of experience in this room, and whether you have someone that is highly experienced, because let's face it, sometimes experience means that you've just been doing whatever it is wrong longer, okay? But Okay, well, see, like I said, someone always has something to say about, that comment. Even if it is, what, Siri or somebody? Yep, not a problem. All right, so if you have nothing good to say, don't say it in front of a paying person, all right, or in front of a guest, or in front of someone that doesn't know. But here's the problem, all right? A lot of people take it as you have nothing good to say, don't say it at all. And that's where a lot of problems happen. Because if someone doesn't get the attention brought to them that, hey, that was a low turn, that was an unstable approach, you had to dig yourself out of that turn. Maybe you need to start it higher, for solo jumpers and things like that, all right? Whatever is canopy-wise coming in, if there's something that needs to be brought to their attention for safety, for any reason, bring it to their attention. Just watch how you do it, because a lot of people don't want to feel like they're on the attack, all right? Give them a reason as to why. And then ultimately, they could be wrong as wrong is. The moment you do that in front of a paying customer of any orientation or any discipline of how they want to learn how to skydive, family member, anything, it doesn't matter. You give the drop zone a bad name. You also put a lot of doubt in the individual, and it never goes good from there. And mostly you're probably not going to get a very receptive person to listen to what you're saying, because you're making them look bad. All right, there's always a time and a place, okay? And sometimes that place is right before getting on the plane. Say something's wrong. Pull them aside, all right? But talk to them privately, and if they're with a tandem, that passenger should think that instructor is the best thing since sliced bread, whether they get to jump with them or not. It's like, oh, he had something he had to do, not a problem. We're going to put you with this person. Everything's good. You were properly trained, so don't worry. He might go over a couple things, but you're going to have an amazing time. Awesome skydive, all right? You don't want to make the person look bad, because ultimately, when it comes down to passengers or paying customers or people visiting your drop zone, one bad means everybody's bad, all right? So do the appropriate thing. But don't just keep your mouth shut if you see something wrong, all right? Tell another instructor. Tell the examiner. Tell your primary trainer. Tell the owner, whatever the case may be, if you're not comfortable necessarily going to that person. But bottom line, again, if there's anyone that's a paying customer or a visiting person, that's not the time or place. All right. Reacting in the pattern. Now we're kind of starting to get closer to the actual, meat and potatoes, the flaring, the landing of the canopy. All right? Landing priorities. Level wing. Open area, free and clear of obstructions. Land with at least 50% of brakes. If you're a solo jumper, being prepared to obviously PLF. Okay? Notice how nowhere in there was there land into the wind. I didn't even say land in the wind, is preferred, or land in the wind if available. Nope. Don't even want to put that in your mind. All right? Because that's when a lot of the fatalities, a lot of the injuries is from people turning low to the ground and not letting the canopy go through its flight cycle. That's a bad thing. All right? You can land a canopy downwind. You can land a canopy crosswind. And obviously, you can land a canopy in the wind. And depending on the speed of the wind, let's face it, sometimes landing a canopy in the wind, if the wind's going fast enough, is still not even a good idea. All right? It's a horrible idea all the other directions, but that's when you also got to know what, right is, what correct is, what your limits are, what you're ready for. All right? Stable approach. The wings, or wing over your head, no oscillation. There are ways to fly your canopy, to turn the canopy, all right, safely, with generating speed, with allowing it to go through a flight cycle, maintaining pressurization, all these things coming into the land with having the wing over your head. From tandem instructors down to people that just got their license or solo jumpers. If you have not taken a course as to better yourself, I encourage you to do so. If you don't want to take a course, okay, that's up to you. But before you downsize, you should probably know how to fly that canopy in every situation, meaning crosswinds, meaning downwinds, all that kind of stuff. Get your accuracy good because, yeah, I can get a smaller canopy, but what happens when you don't get to land in your drop zone? What happens when you're too far out? What happens when the pilot said, hey, you need to get out, and now you have to find somewhere to land and see if you can put that small canopy in there. I have a pro rating on a 97. Am I ever going to put that in a stadium or something like that? Absolutely not. When I first got a pro rating on anything smaller than a 150, it had nothing to do with me saying I can put this into, you know, a stadium or a spectators, you know, they're paying to see me jump. Absolutely not, because I want to set myself up for success. But part of me setting myself up for success was making sure or knowing that I could take a canopy of any size, because I don't have to be prorated to jump a canopy, but I want to have the confidence of that small canopy to be able to get into the backyard of somewhere, because that's the only place I can go if I have to land out on any jump. All right? So having this canopy skills or knowing how to fly your canopy, all right, regardless from solo all the way up to tandem, keeping the canopy over your head. Speed equals stability and lift, all right? Doing a flat turn. If I just do a toggle turn, that's going to oscillate me out from underneath the canopy. It's going to put the canopy in a flight cycle that I don't have much control of. And depending on how high up from the ground I'm doing it, might cause an adverse effect, obviously. That adverse effect becomes more adverse the closer I am to the ground. Braking approach, all right? It's more of a feel type thing, but that sight picture and everything else, when I'm doing a braked approach, that's fine, but do I know how to actually do the braked approach? We're going to talk a little bit about that with the pressurized wing. And of course, obviously no turn over 90 degrees. Under 500 feet, and these are tandems, where that specific rule is, especially from the manufacturer. All right? There's no reason to do a tandem and do a turn over 90 degrees. I don't care about the winds. I don't care about anything really. You can't convince me. I'll let you try. But I guarantee you're not going to be able to convince me to go against knowing how to fly a canopy and how to make it do what you want it to do. And then also understanding the adverse effects of high winds and turning my canopy more to its side on a steep turn and letting the wind possibly collapse the canopy or anything else. What are those effects? All right, a lot of people think, oh, I just got to do a steep turn and get it in there. One, don't know what the bad is about it. Two, probably been extremely lucky up to that point. And three, obviously they don't know the appropriate techniques or the way to fly the canopy to land exactly where you want and regardless of what the winds are. Primarily utilizing, like was instructed by the gentleman right here, of penetration checks throughout the skydive, knowing where you're at. It goes all the way up and all the way back down on the ground before even getting on the plane, of knowing everything about that skydive that led you to that position of landing. Pressurized wing, all right? If you guys are going to take anything from this presentation, all right, especially those that I appreciate you showing up and you're not a tandem instructor, this is what I really want you guys to fully pay attention to. There's a difference between 100% flare and 100% effective flare. What's 100% of flare? All the way up, all the way down. Now, if I'm 6'7", all right, obviously my 100% flare is probably 150% to someone that's 5'4", all right? Because obviously you have more of, you know, a reach to be able to flare. And that's fine. That's 100% flare. But 100% effective flare is the amount of flare that's being used to achieve the two things that you want. One, first above all, is arresting the downward motion. That's one. Two, creating the canopy or helping that canopy do a dynamic stall to where you stop it, all right, And hopefully that stopping it is within 1 to 3 feet of the actual ground. So as you're coming across the ground, you stop that, downward motion, you're planing out, and then you dynamic stall it right when you're at the appropriate height to be able to run it out, walk it out, slide out, whatever it is that you are doing. Now, 100% effective, right? High winds. Am I going to go from here and just bury it down? No, because that's going to make me pitch back up, go back. In low winds, am I going to just flare to here? Absolutely not, because you're not arresting the downward motion. It might take all the way down to here, and then finishing the flare at the bottom end. So 100% effective is you're utilizing 1 to 100 of your 100% flare to the effective means to achieve what you are trying to get. How do we do this? Pressurization. You have got to keep your canopy pressurized. What do we teach all students? If you start to flare and your canopy balloons up, what do we teach them? Do we say, let it back to the keepers? No. All right, because then the canopy is going to dive forward. It's going to go through its flight cycle. For a student canopy of right around 210, it's going to take anywhere from around 60 to 80 feet, depending on the wing loading and all that kind of stuff. Lots of factors in it. But bottom line is it's going to go through a flight cycle. And 9 times out of 10, that flight cycle, you do not have enough altitude for that canopy to finish it. But then you're going to think, well, no, you're kind of contradicting yourself. You're saying I got to, that a braked approach is an appropriate way to land a tandem. And it is, done correctly, done appropriately. Just like a 90-degree turn, I didn't go over 90 degrees, but is a 90-degree toggle turn acceptable? I'm going to say more no than yes, because if you're oscillating out from underneath the canopy, it's not acceptable. Am I doing a 90-degree brake turn instead to where I'm braked, start letting up on the right side to turn left, canopy's pressurized, I'm gaining a little bit of speed, and halfway through my turn, I let up on the other side as well, I come down, and I have full pressurization and full ability to go ahead and flare. Well, yeah, that's a 90-degree turn, I have pressurization, I'm underneath, canopy is above my head, and I have control of what's going on. Let's back up to the braked approach. What do we tell students? We tell students, hold what you got, and then once you start coming back down, that's when you're going to finish your flare. Normally being able to PLF or being prepared to have that PLF. So on a tandem, when I'm getting that braked approach, I'm slowing everything down, I'm sinking it out, I'm underneath the canopy. You see too many times where that tandem instructor, when they feel they have that good sight picture to be able to bring it in, they just throw it all the way up. A lot of times it's luck, a lot of times it's just good timing, they've done it enough, but there's some times where they're low or they're high and the canopy comes up and then that's it, and then they kind of have that plop down where it kind of hurts, all right? So what was wrong with that? Well, what was wrong was they didn't keep their canopy pressurized. So therefore, when you are in a braked approach or you're flaring like this, and you feel the point where as a student you're either kind of popping up, or more importantly, this is more designed for a tandem when you're here and you're wanting it up or to let up. Start letting up, break at the wrist, but start your coming up, but let the canopy start to bring your arms up. Don't you force it up. You letting the canopy start to bring your arms up, you're keeping that pressurization more. The canopy's more pressurized versus pushing out a lot of air and then creating a huge void again. All right? So if I'm pushing out all that air and I slowly let it up, I'm allowing the pressurization, I'm allowing that forward movement to keep the canopy pressurized as I'm coming in for that effective flare. Where does the effective part happen? Well, I would rather have 100% of a 70% flare than 20 or 30% of that 100% flare. What does that mean? Let me explain. And I apologize, I'm only going to use kind of one arm because obviously the microphone. But I get deep in brakes. I let all the way up, right? My canopy is no longer pressurized. My canopy is maybe 20 to 30% pressurized. Uh-oh, I'm about to hit the ground. I'm going to put in 100% flare, but I'm only getting 20 or 30% effective of that 100% flare. Let's go the other way. I'm braked approach. I start letting the canopy, working through its flight cycle, maintaining pressurization. It's starting to bring my arms up. I'm not forcing it up. Now I kind of have to dig out a little bit at the bottom. Okay, fine. I only made it to 60, 70, whatever percent. Now I push out. I have 100% effective of that 70% flare, of that 70%, if that makes sense. But ultimately, I have 100% pressurized canopy. And you're going to get more response out of your canopy doing that, knowing its pressurization. All right? For solo jumpers, a thing or a practice that you can do. When you're up high, lots of altitude, kind of start sinking off your canopy, and you'll know because you're not really getting that forward motion. You're starting to the canopy feels like it's kind of getting mushy, and you start coming down like that. All right? So you can let it all the way up and feel it diving, and when you feel it diving, immediately try to flare again. It's not really going to. Then do it the other way, again, where you do that, and you start letting it up slowly, and then I want you to jam on the brakes. You're going to feel the canopy pop back up, all right, or at least flatten out. It might not pop back up, because remember, in order to get lift, we also need speed. If we're braking, then we don't have a lot of speed going across. We're more or less going down. But what we want, again, in that original bit, is to arrest the downward motion, all right? So that will help you out. Are these things that we're necessarily going to teach a student? Absolutely not. All right? They need to know, hold it to God, be prepared to peel off, and all that kind of stuff. But primarily for this speaking, tandem instructors, absolutely want to teach you that. Keep the pressurized canopy. Keep it over your head. All right, landing etiquette. All right, where is a target landing? Aim for your target. Share the landing area. When going around is an option, and of course, control your student on the ground. All right, who or what is your target? Is it a video person? Is it just a target? Is it a target that everybody's going for? All right, some people think in order to be a good accuracy person, you have to land dead on the X. In reality, to be good at accuracy, I will land where I want to land. That's how to be good accuracy. I used to teach accuracy classes or for pro ratings and things like that. And I'd do a lot of instruction. And of course, I'd put my money where my mouth is. And I would tell them, I used to start with like a paper plate, a newspaper, it didn't really matter, or a hula hoop. I like hula hoops too. But I'll tell them, I'm going to get in the plane. You pick a parachute for me too. Star Trek 1, Star Trek 2, it doesn't really matter. Because a Star Trek 2 is just a Star Trek 1 in heavy winds. A Star Trek 1 is just a Star Trek 2 in light winds, or partially downwind. Doesn't really matter. All right, it's all about the feel and, again, doing those penetration checks and knowing how fast and far I'm going across the ground. But it's real easy. I go up in the plane. I tell them, when I'm in the plane, put it anywhere you want in the drop zone. I'll get out, I'll find it, and I'll land on it. If it's a paper plate or like a newspaper or something, I can promise you I'll get at least 1 foot on it. Because if I'm making a high transition, I want my legs spread a little bit, to get that good, stable, squat out landing. But if the winds are nice and high or whatever, I'll put both feet on it. It doesn't matter. I've yet to fail at doing that because I apply the principles and I apply what I teach them. All right? But know what your target is. Aim for the target. Be aware of its background and its foreground. If any of you guys shoot, if you aim a gun at a target, one of the safety rules for that is know your target's foreground and background. Because if I want to shoot him right here, no offense to you in the back, all right? A high caliber, well, it's obviously going to go through him and hit the other person. That just makes for a bad day, okay? Same thing when landing, especially tandems now. I want to land at my video person, right? But if your video person is good, or more importantly, you as a tandem instructor briefs your video person of where you want to land, and, hey, it just rained. Don't put me over there. I already know it's soggy and everything else, right? And muddy, whatever. Hey, put me right here, but also don't put me right in front or behind another tandem that just landed. Because what happens if I go long? What happens if I go short? Know your target's foreground and background. Share the landing lane. Make room, slide to the side. All right? This comes into a lot of play when I have two tandem canopies and I'm coming in, both of us turning base to final. If I'm the first one, right, but the other guy's right there, kind of on level, but I'm coming in first, we all have been there, do I just want to turn in right there? No. Because what is that going to do? That's going to cause that second canopy to do one of two things. Either make a really sharp turn over 90 degrees to stay to the left side of me, or they have to go past me through my burble to try to get in. And that could also be potentially dangerous. So I want to share the landing. If I'm the first one in, I'm going to take it wider and go to the further side and land. That way when we both turn in at the same time, we both have clean air, and we're both turning at a reasonable 90 degrees or in a reasonable traffic pattern into the landing area. When going around isn't an option, you always blow off the target for safety. Doesn't matter. All right? What would you rather have? The canopy person have to, or not canopy, the video person have to run to where you are to get the smile, or catch that broken landing on video? All right? If we're not under powered flight, you cannot just, full throttle, go around, come back, try it again. You blow off the maneuver, all right, or you blow off the target for a safe landing. Control your student even on the ground. You survive the jump. Here's some chiclets. Now, got to know my audience. I don't know if you guys know what chiclets are, but it's like a little gum, normally a 2-pack of gum, just little white kind of rectangle squares, whatever, right? Look like buck teeth. Okay, there you go. Here's some chiclets. What do I mean by that? Well, if you do not control your student right after landing, they get up, they start walking away from you. That leaves them to get hit by another canopy. Now, in one of the first presentations I've seen, I actually even had the video. I didn't have enough time to kind of put it up because it is kind of funny. A tandem hits another passenger. It's both fault, all right? I'm going to almost say in that particular video, it's more at the fault of the tandem instructor coming in. Why am I going to land anywhere near to the outskirts or the radius of a canopy on the ground? Yeah, that student was not in arm's reach of that instructor. But that student also wasn't moving, and that student was within the canopy that was on the ground. Why did that instructor feel so cool to have to buzz that student or that tandem pair? It's not worth it. It's not necessary. But yes, there is truth to it. You need to control your passenger until you get back to where the harness comes off or whatever. Any instructor, any educational scenario, the jump's not over until after the debrief. All right, so for a tandem, that jump's not over until that person gets safely put where they need to be. Problem passengers. We'll go through this really quick because I'm running short on time, but this is also the last part. Unable of lifting their legs, unconscious, sitting too low, and then of course they're feeling sick. Unable to lift their legs. How tight is the harness? Was the training given to them? Were they trained to break it up in 2 parts, grab underneath their knees, and then also bring that out? Or were they trained, it's like, hey, I do yoga every day. I'm up to 5 minutes on a plank. How about you? Can you do this? Right? 9 times out of 10 they can't. A lot of times this to them is straighten out their legs and put it out. I would rather have them grab underneath their knees because even if they can't get them out at the end, this right here is higher than that when it comes to their legs. All right? What about their health? Okay? And of course, whatever technique. And again, the technique would be breaking up the 2 parts, grab underneath their legs, helping them out however as need be. Am I taking my foot underneath theirs and helping them bend their legs so they can grab underneath it and grab? There's all kinds of things to actually use and do. Unconscious. Once again, how tight was that harness? What is their health? How did I perform a canopy descent? What's the weather like? All right? Who here as a tandem instructor has always wanted to give the student a fun ride when they request it? They're like, I want to do spirals. I want to have a good time, right? I have. No shame of that. I'm trying to give them what they want. Now, how many times have you had that student that asked for the fun ride but didn't really realize what they were asking? I have, right? So one of the things I do, and I want to challenge you guys as instructors to do it yourself, okay? If you're going to do spirals, have your passenger stand on your feet. preferably not on your toes because that's a lot of leverage to try to hold up with, just your calves and everything. But have them stand on your feet close by your ankle. And when you bury that toggle, guess what? The pressure is no longer on their harness, in their hips or their groin area. It's on your feet. So they can take a lot more. They won't have like blood flow problems. They won't get that lighthead, that dizzy feeling. And they can still have fun. And at the same turn, when you're burying that toggle, you'll know when enough is enough because all that weight is on you. All right? Set your passenger up for success. Don't put the harness on too tight. Know how you're flying it. Know the conditions. You guys are the experience. You guys know in the dead of summer, high humidity, people aren't hydrated. People don't eat correctly. All right? Putting that harness on too tight. Now let me just go ahead and add insult to injury and tighten that chest strap too right before we bury the toggle. All right? You're just wanting for someone to get sick on you is pretty much what it comes down to. Sitting too low in the harness. Was it the harness? Was it their health? Health being what kind of body shape do they have? We all know that certain body shapes, no matter how tight you kind of put the harness on the opening shock just promotes them hanging low. All right? So what kind of training do we do for that? What did we do harness-wise in the plane to be able to help out for that? Feeling sick. All right? Pre-jump activities. Again, the canopy descent, the harness. All right? How am I helping that passenger? Am I saying, hey, am I giving them a timeline, right? Kind of like that SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely, right? Hey, 30, 40 seconds we're going to be on the ground. I don't care if it's 55. I'm going to make it sound like 30 because 30 sounds a whole lot better than 55. All right? Talk to your passenger. Have them breathe. Give your passenger the toggles. I've never seen anyone that gets car sick actually drive themselves and puke all over themselves. No, because they're in control. They're the ones controlling everything. I'm not saying let them control the landing and all, but no, you could help them out and help them feel a little bit better. Avoid the spirals, avoid steep turns. When turning, explain to them, hey, we're about to turn. Do this, have them know where to look. If you look straight down, that's going to magnify any turn. Have them look at the horizon. Have them put their feet on your feet. Anything and everything you can do, all the way up to the two-finger pinch method. Who does not know what the two-finger pinch method is? There's always a couple. It's not a problem. It's easy. It's two fingers, pinch, method. Okay? So, when in doubt, sometimes it is what it is. All right? I'm not saying that, let's face it. It's bad to puke. It's worse to get puked on also. So again, self-preservation of the tandem instructor. All right? Do what you got to do. Offer a free t-shirt at the end, whatever you have to do. All right? All right. Most of these problems can obviously be solved by the instructor. All right. Right now we have a landing of an individual. He was older, all right, and this is just, we took pictures like, you know what, we're going to use that. But a gentleman that was a little bit older had problems getting his legs up. All right, so the tandem instructor said, not a problem, I got you covered. He puts his feet underneath the feet of the passenger. As we're coming in, obviously, he continues out, ultimately down the landing. This brings something very, very important when it comes to a landing. Your landing should be like that every single time in the sense of the tandem passenger's feet hitting first. Let's not even say hit. Hit's such a harsh word. Touches the ground first. All right? How many times have you seen tandem instructors come in and we're coming in nice and good, nice landing, sliding in, and the closer we get down, the further up the tandem instructor's legs go. It's kind of like a pulley effect. The further I pull down, the further up my legs go. That should not be the case. All right? We should be landing with our feet going first. That way we can control the landing. We're working that with the flare. All right? Pushing our hips forward, pitching the student up some. And if you can finish it out and stand up, fine. But every landing, should start the same, and every landing can be a slide-in landing. So if I'm just pitched back too far, not a problem. I finish my flare, the student's pitched up, my feet are touching first, and then I slide down to sitting down. Ultimately, I would like the passenger to kind of land on my legs first, then go down. I get it. There are times where the passenger is going to hang a little bit low. But ultimately, especially with the passenger's feet up, your feet should be the ones that touch the ground first. Let's take that passed out passenger. All right? Well, sometimes, you know, when coming in, you want to try to get your feet first. Depending on the winds, you have a couple options. Am I going to come in with more movement, or are the winds good enough to where I can just kind of stall it off just at the right amount to where I kind of come straight down? I take the brunt and then kind of, you know, squat it out and kind of roll to one side. We don't want to come straight down. Coming straight down because you don't know how that passenger's legs are going to buckle. All right? So let the passenger's legs kind of go out and you roll to a side. Same thing with that forward movement. You want to get your feet down, and even if the passenger's feet kind of touch first and start getting pulled behind, well, that's when you got to jab to one side, all right, and roll to where you're taking the brunt and they're landing kind of on you, all right? It's part of being the instructor. I have like rolled my right ankle twice protecting a student. First time I did it, I was for sure, broke my ankle. But luckily I didn't. Although when I just stood straight, if I rotated my right knee inward, my ankle, kind of the bone itself, started to come out. Oh, those are some torn, stretched ligaments. But the passenger got up and went away. All right? And ultimately, it's about them at the time. I'm being paid to take the risk. They're not. They're paying for a service. Okay? So watch the landings. Your feet need to touch first. Have that effective flare. Have that effective 100% flare as we're coming in. Remember what the job of the flare is, to arrest that forward downward motion, and then of course at the appropriate time frame, have that dynamic stall of the canopy to where you stop. But also remember, finishing the flare is a big deal. All right? It's an appropriate thing to do. Conclusion. We talked about planning, obviously, communication, thinking throughout the jump, and of course reacting for a safe outcome of landing. All of this starts on the ground. All right? As you're going through, you're picking up small things. Know what's around you. Know all the contributing factors that leads to a good landing. Most of every time where there's a problem, there could have been, you know, well, that happened. Well, then that also happened. There was a snowball effect as to why something happened. All right? Start thinking about those things, the end outcome, and then break down all the things that could happen, and then also to support you to getting the end outcome that you like. I appreciate your guys' time. Do we have any questions? If we are, know that we are a couple minutes late, so I will not take offense to people that get up and have to go to a different class or anything like that. But if there are any questions, please do ask. Otherwise, I do appreciate your time. I greatly appreciate those that even aren't tandem instructors, and hopefully you guys are walking away or away from here with at least one thing to be able to apply or make yourselves, you know, safer jumpers, but more importantly, again, geared towards tandems, and make the actual community or the skydiving itself a safer drop zone, safer issue, safer industry. All right, I appreciate you very much.